Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, and I'm Wilson of Marshall. Well, we're moving straight down to the U.S., where for the fourth day, there's been massive protests against Donald Trump immigration stand. Right now I had to send, at first, we sent, let's say, some anti-riot policemen to quell the particular squabble, but still it wasn't enough. Right now, over 700 Marines are in Los Angeles saying, go back to your homes. We are not here for you. We are here for illegal migrants. And it just gets messier and messier as the day goes by. Nobody wants to back down. At first, there was a raid on a hardware company, and of course, there was also a raid in a textile company where you have these immigrants working just to eke out a living. And the owners of the company, and of course their relative friends, are saying, leave these guys alone. They are great help and assist to us. Trump, what in the world do you think you're doing? Well, it's still all right now. Day 4 and counting. With me here in the studio to talk about this, I have a legal practitioner, public affairs commentator. Join me to welcome Barrister Henry Wonzo. Barrister, welcome to International Forum.
Listeners and viewers, once more, good afternoon. Wilson, it's good to be here again.
All right. So very close to me is a vibrant politician and entrepreneur. And of course, when we talk about international politics, it's well grounded. Because of that, I like to call him Sonny. Join me to welcome Honorable INT'L Gilbert. Sonny, how you doing?
Good afternoon, viewers. Good afternoon.
Okay, joining us visually, he arrived all the way from New Jersey, USA. Yes, I believe that he might have been there since some of these protests. He has a lot to say about it. If he's able to make contact with us, because he's trying right now to connect to us. Once he did or whatever, if he's able to do it, you get to hear his own side of the story. But today, I want to be bringing to you news around the world. We are diving straight into the discussion because of the exigencies of this discussion. Let me start off with Honorable INT'L Gilbert. What do you feel about the Trump ban, and what do you feel about the reaction of Californians?
Well, I think the reaction is just starting from California. I'm very, very sure that the reactions will spread across the U.S. over time, because I'm sure when the German Chancellor visited the White House, there was this insinuation of him providing or presenting a birth certificate of Trump's great-grandparents, which means President Trump himself would have been, was born from an offspring of migrants into the U.S. So I do think that the policies are very harsh. I think that the policies does not put into consideration the things that matters most to humanity in terms of social welfare, and for families to be feeling hurt and then find the needs to come out and start creating unrest in California as a kind of a pioneer state with regards to what is happening with this new administration is something that I think is going to eventually snowball into much bigger and bigger problems for Donald Trump if he does not take a step back and review his policy on just picking up people outside the economic gains of the American industry and deporting them back to the countries of origin. If he says that he has problems with some criminal elements from certain countries who are prone with drugs trafficking, which obviously Nigeria, for instance, is not part of this sort of country, I think then there's a gap there, there's a misplaced priority on the side of Trump to just start behaving like an extremist right wing, if you like, and then do one good thing to stop the killings in wars across the world, and another thing to just start punishing families and maybe separating them from their kids that was born in America. I personally don't think it's that important now, because those things that is happening and deporting people is not the immediate challenge of the Americans. I think the biggest and the immediate challenge of the Americans is the mentality of the majority of Americans who has a way of getting involved into ways of maybe owning firearms and shooting at people at will and dealing with gun crime. These are things that he can actually address, because I know that many African citizens in America don't even want to deal with gun crime. Even most cases, even when they are born there, their parents still helps them to guide them to grow up with some values from the African states. So I think the policy is bad, and I just believe that the rioting and the protest is going to keep increasing. And I'm sure that may force Trump to rethink his position.
All right, thank you so much, Honorable Chiosage. But Barrister Henry Wanzo, do you share his views or you differ from his own opinions?
Well, to some extent, I share his views, but again, you look at it from the angle of the man who is trying to initiate the policies. The man has his reasons for initiating, though it has its far-reaching consequences, politically, socially, and economically, on the Americans, as it were. But again, the man equally looked at the issue of security, because he tries to level most of the countries, who they are migrants, constitute some security risk, as it were, to America. Again, he was also looking at it from the angle that they coming in too, puts pressure on public resources, in the area of education, in the area of healthcare, the social security and others. But again, you discover that most of these migrants, they have degrees, they are skilled, and they have, assisted in creating a lot of innovations in the American economy generally. So to me, to some extent, his policies will go a long way in putting things right, but again, he should have a human face to avoid this protest that is going on. I know the protests other cities want to join, but at the same time too, I see that he will be able to manage it because of the man he is. He will be able to manage the crisis. Though 700 Marines and other officers are within trying to quell the protest, but I know of the truth that at the end of the day he will be able to make a headway. I quite buy his ideas. The migrants are immigrants, as it were. They equally have assisted in helping the economy of United States one way or the other. Though again, it has equally affected some of the low-skilled nationals too, in terms of wages, depression, and others. So generally, it is a good idea to some extent, because for whenever you have a kind of policy, it will have its own effects, and at the same time, it will have its own good aspect of it too.
All right. Well, you said you're not in support of his policy to some extent, while Barrister Henry said, yes, it's a good policy to protect the U.S. as a country. But take a look at what Trump is saying. If you don't have a legal document, if you don't have that particular paper, so to speak, that gives you permission to stay in the U.S., why not go back home? Is there a crime in it?
And on my part, I think that is hypocritical, because Donald Trump's great-grandparents are migrants, his direct parents are migrants. He's from the Eastern Bloc, through Scotland, and he was born in America. His wife currently is a migrant. At some point, she was an illegal immigrant to an extent, because she probably came in on a visiting visa and eventually over time regularized her residency. There's nothing wrong with giving those people in those countries residency. I mean, the people that they are deporting now may not have committed any crimes. A lot of them are living in America. They're actually working class people. They are working, even if they're on the low ends and supporting the economy, like he said. At the same time, they're actually working to help also develop and progress the American state. I mean, is Donald Trump not aware of the slave trade? Is he not aware when the Western countries came to Africa to forcefully take people back there just to do manual labor? Where was the visas that made them illegal immigrants? They forced them out of their countries in those days. How are you going to get up and turn that around now? By just attacking people even at their workplace without no criminal records. So to me, that shows that element of animosity of Donald Trump being in a right-wing political party trying to appeal or appease certain elements within the Republican state. As much as I like Donald Trump's foreign policy on stopping wars around the world, which is what I didn't quite like with the Democrats under Obama, President Bush, and Biden, who are warmongers. As much as I respect and I like the fact that he's doing his best to stop wars outside the country, which is not much hostile in terms of the military, militarizing the entire continents of the world. In terms of business, you can also see Trump showing some level of greed, because he's dealing with Ukraine, for instance, and telling them, well, you need to sign a mineral deal in order to support you, which means he wants to benefit from the fact that the war is going on, not just saying that he doesn't want the war to exist. So he's trying to take advantage of the errors they made to sign deals that will, you know, coerce them into being slaves to the American state on the business side of things, which is not much different from the military side of oppressive mechanism of using people to achieve an aim against Russia, because at the end of the day, one of them is a hostile approach, one of them is a more democratic or maybe liberal approach, but actually serve the same purpose, because the both processes for the same very selfish and personal interest, whether it is for violent or non-violent. But obviously I respect Trump because the approach of non-violent approach is better than the violent approach. But then coming back to the issue of migrants, where I disagree with my brother here, that the Trump's case of what he's doing in America will serve his better, is because I can tell from being, you know, knowing him here in the studio and otherwise, I may not have lived in America or maybe visited America. I'm just assuming, but I believe that could be the case. I have visited America. I have lived in America. So I can tell you firsthand that the area that he's tackling with immigration and even going to workplace to deport people is just a far-right idea. It's just an extremist, racist approach hiding behind government policy, very harsh policy, to deport people who probably even have kids in this country. Your kids is in America. No, I'm going to stop the fact that you're born in America, you cannot be an American citizen because the parents are not American citizens themselves. Okay, fine. But in London and most countries in European countries, if your parents are not citizens, you don't get citizenship anyway. So there's no big deal with you stopping that. But for those that are already there, he should find a way to regularize it. And if he's dealing with the criminals, it should be that they've caught them in the act and deported, which obviously keeps even those who are living in America safer from the problems of those who brings crime attributes from their countries, like in Cuba and Mexico and some of these countries. You can't just rope everybody up on the same box and tell me that you are doing it because you care for America. No, the biggest problems in America is the use of drugs. The biggest problems in America are not migrants, but the Americans themselves, because they have a mentality of not caring about life. A lot of the migrants that are there, outside the fact that people may commit a white-collar crime, a violent crime, majority of the crimes in America are done by Native Americans, those that are born in America, who has grown in a certain way, who are members of gangs, organized crime, and they carry guns. So attacking and targeting innocent people is what would have made the legitimate citizens to come out now and start rebelling and protesting against Trump. And I can assure you for a fact, it's not going to go far with this.
All right.
With time, it's going to pull back and have a rethink.
Well, as you can see right now on the screen, these are some of what the citizens in America are saying. Say, look, Trump, we love these people. We don't hate any of them. You deporting them, no matter the reason you're giving, is not so cool. But, Barrister, if you take a look at where Trump is, like, you know, talking from, it's all about, according to him, the MAGA approach, making America great again. To him, to make America great again, some of these people need to leave. But do you feel that the way he's going about it, do you think it's too harsh? First and foremost, anti-riot police supporting immigration officers, and now you have Marines sent to workplaces to fish out migrants without complete papers. Do you think it's too harsh?
Well, to some extent, it's harsh. And again, you ask the question, what has these persons done all these years they have been there? Because the question that you ask, if you know you are a migrant, you have come to a particular country, and you know there are conditions. Once you are between the age of 18 and above, you should be able to regularize your stay, as it were. What are the processes that should have, you know, started the processes, as it were, when you came in? Knowing fully well that at the end of the day you want to remain in that particular country. Some persons will go into a country knowing fully well what they need to do and refuse to do it. Sometimes you ask yourself, nobody knows the Pharaoh that will come that will not know Joseph. And that is the situation as it were now. The man has come, believing that these migrants are part of the problem, that why America is not great as it used to be great. But the question then is, what has the migrants on their own part, have they contributed to the development of America, as it were, which they have done, as it were. Though some of them might have some criminal tendencies, but that is not to say in totality that all the migrants are part of the problem of America. Just as I said, it's had its own consequences, both social, economic, and political, as it were. These migrants on their own, some of them, for the fact that they have gotten to America, they get themselves relaxed. They didn't go to formalize all the documentations they needed to do. I have somebody who called me, has been there, he's in Nigeria, he has been there for over 10 to 15 years. And he just remembered that his documentations in terms of the marriage, he sent a document to me. I discovered that the document that was given to him in 2016 was done by the brother somewhere in one of the courts, as it were. But when I looked at it, I told him actually that this document is falsified. You cannot use it. Already he has used it. And the immigration office there has raised some issues, which was the same issues that I raised. So what I'm trying to say in essence, that some of us, by the time you have got into a particular place, you get yourself relaxed. What you need to do timeously was not done timeously, trying to get your papers to enable you to stabilize yourself where you are. And at the end of the day, you now face what presently some of them are facing. Accepted that they are going into factories and other places to fish out migrants who are not documented, and deporting them, as it were. Though, to some extent, it is not the best, because it goes a long way in affecting the economy, as it were, because it is this migrant, just like we in this part of the world, saying that our brothers who are coming from the north, they are the ones who are doing most of the menial jobs. Our people here will no longer do. It's the same thing you find what is happening in America today, because most of all these jobs are done by these migrants who will want to work long hours in the factories. They will work shifts, they can work in the morning, come back again later at night, and work till the following morning as it were. So which the native Americans on their own cannot do. So to me, accepted it's a good idea to reduce in terms of the issue of security and improve on the public resources, as it were. But again, you should look at it properly and see how you'll be able to manage it. Just as my brother here said that the protest will continue. Well and good, the protest will continue, because surely people will always want to raise issues when it comes to a thing of this nature. But again, at the end of the day, the primary aim will it not be achieved in making sure that America gets better than as it is today. It's just like as we are in Nigeria. The government is having so many policies. We are talking about hardship, as it were, today in Nigeria. Nobody is saying that the government do not have good policies. It's just like a father. Somebody say, oh, my father will decide to punish me without giving me food and all. No, the government itself has reasons for taking some certain action, just as we have in this part of the world. The president came and said, oh, subsidies is well. This is gradually the economy is trying to revive itself, though it's going to take a long time. But people have to suffer to a particular extent before things will get back. It's the same thing that you find in America today. So to me, after the dust settles, it will be better for the Americans, as it were.
Well, you see, heard me said after the dust settles, it will be better for the Americans. After all, if you get to a place, you have to regularize your papers. He gave an example of one of his person that didn't do that, and now they're having issues. I don't think that these migrants, they were so lackadaisical in talking about, like, upgrading, so to speak, regularizing their papers to be full citizens or having the right to work in America for a period of time.
That is one aspect of an argument. What about people in countries like 18, 19 countries or thereabout that Trump has banned from getting visas to come to America? Because he says that their country is not creating enough security. But is Donald Trump not aware that majority of the problems in this world today were wars caused by the same America, where he's just going to be president for less than 3 years and some months from now?
How would you say that?
Because at the end of the day, the problem that has been caused in most of the countries outside America are things led by the same American government, successive, not necessarily under Donald Trump, that would have created instability in some of this country that makes people migrate and mass to America. For example, in Ukraine and Russia, a lot of Ukrainians was granted asylum and refugee in America, only because the American government was standing for Zelensky to fight and challenge the Russian president because they want a NATO base in Ukraine. So it was okay to have these millions of people come in, and it is not okay to have another couple of millions of people who are working in the factory to stay in America. They are working, they are earning their money. You see, you can't use the American situation to compare the Nigerian state in terms of hardship. There is similarities, but it's two different cases. Why? Because you're talking about taking people away from America and disconnecting them from their family. But in the Nigerian state, there might be hardship because the presidency is trying to correct the macroeconomy that has been ignored for the last 40 years, which has kept us in perpetual poverty and indebtedness, before you can come into the microeconomy, which affects the everyday life. But the families are still together, going through the hardship together. But in America, in the first term of Donald Trump, in his first 4 years, he was deporting people while their kids were in school. That is sheer wickedness. That is racism to the highest order. You know, you cannot pretend to like people of other ethnic background because he's trying to please a certain element within the Republican who was always known to be right-wing people and are racist. And at the end of the day, have an argument that is viable for any exposed mind in that area for it. Because remember, when people live in America, you can have the biggest criminals as American citizens who would have raped kids, who would have sold drugs and destroyed so many lives in America. They're still held in America, imprisoned in America. When they're released out of jail, they commit crime again, but they're American citizens. So being an American citizen or being a resident in America is not enough to be disrespectful to the human rights of other people who has come to seek a better life in America. It doesn't make sense to go to a factory and start fishing for people at work who have contributed to the economy. So it was okay for the imperialists to come to Africa to take people by force and kick the rest into the high sea when they don't want them, to do manual labor and suffer to help them build America and England. And it's not okay if they're able to find their way to America now. How many thousands of people is it going to deport in almost 300 million economy in America? What about the people living in subways, people who have worked and earned money, maybe through divorce or whatnot, they lose their homes and they're living in the subway? Has it bothered to help those people to get themselves back? These menial jobs are not done by citizens of America most of the time. The American citizens, many of them are very lazy as well. They don't want to work. They live on food stamps. They live on social welfare. The immigrant comes and balance that book. The bad part of this whole immigration thing is you come in and get people out of the country because they are not legal, but they have a family that you are disconnecting them from. They may have a way, they might be in the process of regularizing their paper. A few percentage may not have, which is what he's trying to say. I know there are elements like that. What he's just saying is that people should have been proactive to know that when they do this, they'll be fine. There are a lot of American citizens, there are a lot of people outside America who doesn't even want to live in America. There are millions of American citizens living elsewhere in the world, elsewhere. They don't want to live in America, but they have American citizenship. So Trump shouldn't be gassed in a way when they say somebody's gassed to kind of create so much importance to this American thing. Because in America, you can be talking 1 minute, next minute somebody can run around with a pool driver and end your life right there in America, all in America. Every day people die in America. I don't think the amount of immigrants coming into America, you can compare it to the amount of people that die in America every day. So I think the policy is racist. I think it is wrong. Even if you have to deport them, allow them to be taken to court, allow the judiciary to look at the effort they made to regularize their papers. You don't know what sort of challenges they have. Somebody might be sick, is in the hospital because he's been working hard in America. He must have caught pneumonia, and then you come because he's an illegal immigrant and you kick him out of the country, taking everything he has away from them. So to me, there's no amount of argument that will make me support the issues of immigration, because that immigration thing has a direct affiliation with social welfare and family ties within America. So Trump himself is a migrant. His parents were migrant. He was born in America. Imagine his parents were migrant, born in America, and his parents was kicked out of America. Would he dream of becoming a billionaire? He's a billionaire. So no matter how difficult it will be for people or in America to the day he goes to where God wants him to be when he's old enough, he's a rich man is a rich man. So we should consider those people on the lower cadre.
All right, it's like we're going forward, of course, against any particular discussion, because one way or the other, we are all affected. We have friends, we have relatives, brothers and sisters, even more dads, uncles, aunts that are there in America battling this particular scourge. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break to talk some more. Do not go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, Day 4 and counting. Yes, in California, Los Angeles, to be precise. People are like saying, Donald Trump, you bring in immigration officials to enforce your travel ban to take out persons without proper documentation is totally wrong. At first, a textile house was raided, and of course, a hardware house was raided. Americans came out in their numbers saying no. Enough is enough. It's like the citizens shielding the persons they want to come take out of the picture. So you have to go back to your country and say, no, we love these people. They're important to us. Not all of them are criminals. You just can't throw them back to their countries. But Donald Trump said, if you have your complete papers, we don't have issues with you, you can stay. But we are targeting the illegal immigrant, no matter the importance they are to you, to the country's detriment because of security reasons. And I have a barrister, Henry Walzo, and of course, Honorable INT'L Gable. Like I said earlier on, that if Honorable Gariba can join us all the way from New Jersey, USA, definitely we're going to hear his own side about his own feeling about what is happening, talking about the protest. Now, let me come to you, Barrister Henry Walzo. From what Honorable INT'L said, he said, look, no matter how you say it, it is racist and it's highly political that Donald Trump is trying to favor or listen or massage the ego of some Republican members. Now, what do you have to say about this? Do you have this political intonation?
You see, the truth there is whatever policy you as a leader, government puts in place, people will always raise issues and try to ascribe one thing or the other to it. It might be right to some extent, but the question again you ask yourself is the purpose of the action of the president. Is it for the interest of Americans? Is it for the interest of the economy of the country? Is it for the interest of social security of the country? Is it for the interest of the political diversity, as it were, of the country? All these things must be put in place, and by the time you weigh them and try to balance it, you also find out that accepted that certain persons will be hurt because of the level of heat that is coming out from the actions of the president. But at the same time too, some persons are equally will be happy that this action is taking place, because to some extent it will help to reduce that pressure on the social life of the Americans. It will also, in terms of the resources, in terms of health, education, and others, it will help to again, for those of them who, in terms of wages, they have challenges in terms of wage depression. It will also come and this. And you also find out too that those nationals who are low skilled too, they equally will be affected by these actions, as it were. But when these migrants leave, as it were, some of them will have the opportunities which they never had before to do certain things if they have the capacity to actually fit in. So to me, accepted is going to hurt, which is just rightly as he said. But again, the essence of it is to make America great again, just as the man said. And in making America great again, that these migrants who have refused to document themselves, because the issue there is that is documentation. If you have your documents that makes you, that enables you to reside in America, we have no challenge with you. But for some of them who have refused or who inevitably, failed to do that which they would have done long before now, and now a leader who has come, who has decided to see it from a different angle, it has its reasons. Persons will say, oh, he's trying to favor those who are from his political group. But again, the question is it for a particular group that is, will it not be for the benefit of Americans at the end of the day? if those places, because you find out that the migrants who are being asked to document themselves, some of them now must have started doing the documentations as it were, which they never thought of doing before now. Some of them will started doing the documentation.
But I don't think that the process of documentation would be hot in the sense that the raid is ongoing. Who want to listen to them now?
I accepted that nobody will want to listen to them, but you also find out too that those areas they go to, because to me, I am only thinking from my own personal point of view. But the areas they are going to, maybe areas where people in those areas have refused to do anything that borders on issue of documentation. Because you find that some persons in those areas might decide not to do anything that has to do with documentation. They will just feel, oh, I have already gotten a job in a factory, I've gotten a job in a hardware company where I'm working, there will be no need for me to do any documentation. The company itself will be able to take responsibility when it becomes necessary that I'm being challenged for remaining in America without any paper. Oh, the company might cover me up with one document or the other that will enable me to remain. That is the mindset of some of them that, you know, might have this challenge as it were. But again, to me, it has its good side, it has its also good bad side, which to me will be able to balance it, and at the end of the day, America will be great again.
Interesting. Now let's take a look at the security implication of all this. Knowing fully whether there's chaos or there's massive protest, security personnel will focus more on this particular protest. Who will now be the one to safeguard America from either internal or external aggression?
Before we speak on the adverse effect it may have on the issue of security, because there will be less focus on certain areas, which is the conventional security they should provide for America. With all due respect to Barrister, this policy or this action does not make America great again. That is you trying to echo and re-echo Donald Trump's idea of making America great. Even the Democrats don't agree with him that some of the things that he's doing makes America great. Like I said, I'm an admirer of Donald Trump because of his foreign policy, how it directly affects me. Because whatever is happening in Ukraine or Russia directly affects Africa. The cost of wheat has gone up. The cost of oil has gone up. Those Russian states and in the Far East that produce cheaper energy have been blocked up because of the greed of the Americans. He has not spoken on that. All the militarization of the world, all the military bases all across the world, I would have wished Donald Trump has put them back up and bring them back to secure America, since America is the only country in the world that people want to live in. How does dismantling families or going to a workplace for people who are working and paying social security, contributing to the economy of the country, maybe paying taxations and everything, deporting them, making America great, whether they don't even have a criminal record? How about all the things that has been happening in America that has a lot to do with the idea of the crime that is existing in America? How can they prove it that the foreigners are really those people creating the problem? No, they are hypocrites, because they are quick at snowballing and sounding loud any offense or criminal act of a foreigner in America. An example of that is when a Nigerian guy was apparently caught with a bomb in his pan going to Detroit. They turned around and told you that, oh, Nigeria will be put on the watch list XYZ. No. But a lot of Americans has left America to commit terrorist acts in another country. Right. That is not enough to make America or call them terrorists.
Okay, so you just hold on, I'll come back to you. But let's move it straight down to New Jersey. One over here, everybody's standing by. Let's get to hear what it feels Americans are feeling in this particular region. Honorable Egi, it's a pleasure to have you join us virtually. So what is the situation like right now?
Thank you very much, Wilson, and sorry for the delay in the connection. The situation, of course, is tensed in California, going by the riots that have been taking place, especially against the Immigration and Custom Enforcement Agency, which is ICE. And I'll tell you what, this all even started from just a rumor, when some people thought they were going to, they spread some rumor around on social media, and ICE was at a certain uh, place called a Home Depot, usually where you get home equipment and devices for your home. and that they were going to arrest the undocumented immigrants who usually across the United States, you're going to find these Latino immigrants in the parking lots of these places offering services. Most of them are handymen. Maybe you've got a plumbing job. If you've got stuff to do plumbing in your home, if you've got a paint, some are painters. They just are handymen usually. But unfortunately, this was actually a rumor, and so people stormed the place to try to prevent that, and it's escalated into what it is today. But it is difficult for many to understand what is going on in the United States, especially the Donald Trump policy. But being a student of international relations and having comparative policies and all of that, you try to look at what happens in other countries and see where Donald Trump is coming from. I'll tell you one piece of information that you should bring to your mind. Turkey today has the largest Muslim population in the whole world, but Turkey was not always a Muslim country. It used to be a Christian country. Now, uh, the United States is, according to Donald Trump, under siege. And to a large extent, I agree with him. Because if you look at the changing demography of the country, in this part of the world, they make projections for decades ahead. They are not looking at the immediate, which is what is causing most people to react with emotions because a lot of people are situating their observations based on what they can see immediately right now. Okay, I'll tell you, if an African or a Nigerian comes to the United States, your children are born here. Your children will fully integrate and identify as Americans before they will probably be saying that my parents are Nigerians, but I'm an American, even though their parents have American citizenship. They separate themselves. But with the Latino population, it will appear they have an agenda, which I believe Donald Trump is saying true. The border that was opened with Mexico for me was deliberate. They are trying to overrun the American population here, and knowing that when you give birth on arrival, and with time, the Latino population will be able to become a major force in the United States. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to advance because they just do not integrate. I see people who coming from Latino countries who be in the United States for up to 10 years and they don't speak English. Deliberately, they just speak Spanish because in most American public services and buildings, it's become almost mandatory that Spanish is a second language, or you get an interpreter to interpret Spanish. It was only Donald Trump who came out to officially recognize that English language is the only language and official language of the United States. Don't forget, these guys come here with a lot of sentiments. What are the sentiments they are coming with? Let's situate this to California. California used to be a part of Mexico. So they feel like, and many states like Nevada, Oklahoma, Texas, many of them were part of, Mexico. It was after the war between the United States
There you go.
uh, and Mexico that these territories were ceded to the United States. So I believe deep down in their hearts, they are hoping that since America is practicing democracy, with time, if they don't integrate, if they keep speaking their Spanish so that they don't get mixed up with the other population, they hardly even marry outside of themselves because they are trying to stay compact so that with time they can have that number to effect the changes they want. I believe this is what Donald Trump is saying. He can see 10, a decade from now, 2 decades from now, 3 decades from now, 4 decades from now, because these guys are not integrating. That is the biggest threat that I believe is being checked here. They are not integrating. They are not, people come in here. By the time you attain your American citizenship, you begin to think like an American. The system was set up like that, to give you a reorientation, towards, and you now start ascribing to or subscribing to American ideals and values. But these guys separate themselves from, they live in America, but not as Americans. For the most part of them, they don't want to be Americans. So these are, for me, they are a danger to the United States on the long run. And somebody's got to nip it in the bud. You can't create, okay, look at the protest in California. What were you seeing? Mexican flag. The last time that happened in Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria came very hard on even the young people who had the flag of Russia in Nigerian territory. Now they are waving Mexican flag in the United States. That shows you where their hearts are. So there's a larger implication for what is going on. How many planes have come from the United States to bring any African that is being reported? Because Africans integrate, they become Americans, they do great things here. But these guys are not integrating. And it's happened in the United Kingdom. I used to live there. The British government that is why the United States had to bring in the electronic visa for the United Kingdom. It used to just be get a British passport, jump on a plane, and come to the United States. They had to stop it because they felt like they were harboring people. You could go to places like a place called Finchley Park. You have people in the United Kingdom of Arab origin who are preaching. Every Friday after the mosque, they pick up the mic and preach against the United Kingdom. That Islam is going to overrun the country, and yet they are on government benefit. The government is housing them. The government is paying them. If you look at the same scenario, the last Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak of India, most of the mayors of the most important cities in the United Kingdom today are of Asian descent. Why? Because the United Kingdom was looking the other way. They did not come hard when one Indian man would go home and bring 20 members of his family. And now they have become so influential in the United Kingdom that they've even produced a prime minister. The mayor of London is of the same descent. Birmingham, Manchester, they are Asians. If you go to the British High Commission in Nigeria today, look across the counters of those interviewing you. 7 out of 10 will be Asians. Go to the airport, Asians, police Asians. They changed the demographic. They've all but taken over London. So California is the most important state to the United States. With a GDP of over $4 trillion, it's not something they're going to toy with.
Wow.
Of course, politics will come in.
Honorable, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You just gave another angle to this discussion.
Exactly.
You came out with something that many people do not know, something that people didn't really see what Donald Trump is really fighting against.
Of integration.
Let me come to you now, Honorable Chosen. We have just barely 5 minutes to call it a wrap on the show.
Okay.
The running over of Americans by these immigrants. The government example of Turkey used to be a Christian state, but now, because of time and all that, he talked about some presidents in the UK speaking against UK government, but
they live in UK.
So I mean, it's like Trump is saying no to that.
I grew up in England most of my life. What he was talking about, I know about. It happened in Bradford when people, because of the 9/11 thing and the oppression of the American state, fighting with the Al-Nasr Front and the Jimmy Avin Muslim power bloc.
Yeah.
That is a completely different matter.
Are you sure it's completely different?
Listen, let me tell you this.
The Spanish people,
let me tell you this. It's a completely different matter. Let me tell you this. For his information, my brother Yareva should know that America as a country originally was owned by the Red Indians. They are closer to the Spanish than the so-called English-speaking Americans today. America is not the land of the English-speaking people. They came to colonize them. If you want to go to that argument, it's a completely different direction of this argument. So if you're saying that, for instance, it is because they don't want them to, it's not nice when you live in a country for 10 years, you keep speaking Spanish. That battle is between the Americans who came to occupy them and those who claim that or assume that that is their land. That is their issue. The Nigerians that were deported from America, do they speak Spanish? They don't.
But don't think Donald Trump is just being fair.
No, Donald Trump, let me tell you, Donald Trump is a migrant himself. His parents were migrant. And for his information, the people that were moved from Ukraine to America recently because of the war, do they speak English? No, they don't. So it's comfortable for Americans to go to other countries.
You're forgetting what part is talking about integration.
Let me tell you. No, wait.
Is it that doing
this conversation? Don't miss it. You have to be logical in this reason.
No, hold on. Take a look at it.
Integration. Exactly, but that doesn't come on this conversation we've been having. It's talking about migrants not documented. Even if you're talking about integration, they deported Nigerians the other day. Do they speak Spanish? No, they don't.
Now,
so the Spanish and the American disagreement is a completely different issue.
All right, now he raised another point. They are protesting, but they are waving Mexican flags.
Look, that is a different matter from this issue we've been discussing in terms of citizens living in America and they're not documented. It's a different matter. Nigerians that were deported are not Spanish. They don't speak Spanish. And they're not fighting with Americans over the states.
Anyway, I pray that we're going to have another to really talk about this. And now I'll speak to the about you. I don't know what happened to them because of our internet issue and the rest of them from the beginning to the end. Is going to be here to really expose some of the power that Donald Trump is saying that we might not know.
What he's saying is racism. What he's doing is wrong because America came to Africa to take people who don't speak English.
But it's that he's protecting America.
No, how
can you be in a
what is comfortable for them? They come to Africa to take people to the state free who don't speak American.
Anyway, but that at the time they came to Africa was just for an issue of labor.
Because it was comfortable for them.
See, but what he is trying to, his argument is very clear. That the issue of integration, these people that have entered America, they are already based in America. Yet they refuse to integrate.
The Nigerians that were deported recently, do they speak Spanish?
Those ones are refused to do their documentation.
Gentlemen, lots of racist. I would have gone back to anybody again, but because of time, we have to call it a wrap right now. Not to worry, there might just be a part 2 of this discussion. Watching as a matter of fact, it stands right now. What Honorable Garibaldi said, he said the place is tense because right now is the people versus the immigration officer versus the anti-riot police and Marines. Let's see how this will pan out. Honorable Garibaldi, thank you so much for that expose. I probably have another to talk about this, and of course I like your stand also, Honorable Etiose, but you're speaking for the people saying no matter what, you should let them be. And of course, for
the Raywa's issue is different from what we were talking about.
It is part of it.
No, it's not.
It is part of it.
The Nigerians that were deported, over 200 Nigerians who were living in America don't speak Spanish.
No, but they will do their documentation.
Gentlemen, our time is up. We'll do it again next week Tuesday. Bye for now.